You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous. Her loyalty is only to the family she serves. She will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change, who are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating a space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were born wild. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Henderson, and today I have with me Emilie. And will you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. I'm so excited to be here today with you. So my name's Emilie Martin, and I'm the founder of Motherheard and former therapist, but I am also a mom and wife. And so with Motherheard have now been starting basically a business of therapeutic listening, home visits, and virtual calls for moms at all stage of matrescence and in their maternal wellness. So we can, of course, get into that a lot more, but that's basically why I wanted to come here today to talk about kind of that work, but also just some of the things that I've been thinking about within that and in motherhood. So I don't know how much we want to talk about my personal story or not, but
we do. Yeah,
okay.
we love personal stories if you want
Great,
to.
great. Yeah, I'm a pretty open book. So.
Yeah, usually my first question is, how did you end up being here today doing what you do? Like, where did your journey begin, either into motherhood or for this business?
Oh, yeah, and obviously they're so interconnected. Let's see. I mean, I almost want to start 10 years ago when after college, I went to the Middle East. I moved to Jordan and I had the opportunity to stay with some family friends and work in a trauma center for Syrian refugee kids and families. And also work in some of the camps around Jordan, close to the Syrian border, on humanitarian missions. And even though I wasn't trained in this at the time, work on some of the psych teams, helping them meet with individually in groups with people, with translators. And so in the course of that, I think in witnessing and hearing so many stories of significant trauma and displacement in families and with mothers with really young children, some of whom had lost pregnancies during the course of fleeing Syria in the context of war and torture, who had really young kids who were severely traumatized, who were struggling with breastfeeding because of the PTSD and severe stress. And so yeah, it was really hearing the stories of these women and these families and the impact on the kids that then catapulted me a few years later into wanting to go to grad school to become a therapist. And my dad's a clinical psychologist, so I was somewhat familiar with this world before, but I decided to go to get it's like a counseling, psychology, marriage, and family therapy degree. So in the course of that, which was amazing, of course, you delve so deeply into childhood or child development and attachment and learn really how essential every part of the mother's journey is for setting your children up for their emotional regulation, for their own attachment in what will be their relationships for the rest of their lives. And so toward the end of that, when everyone starts practicum, I went and was working in high school. So then I was seeing adolescents and doing groups and individual therapy. And after that, kind of continued on in the community mental health setting, working when I was an associate MFT. I worked, actually, it was quite an age range. It was like age 5 to 25. So, and some young families, because of course
They're like, you're not a grown-up until you're 25, so you're basically in the same group as a 5-year-old.
Exactly, like our brains haven't stopped forming, so it's that like a category from kid to young adult, I guess. But yeah, because it was also a really under-resourced population, there would be there would be teen moms coming in, or I had a couple clients who had losses during that time and they weren't even partnered. And I don't know. So that was a really intense experience as well. I'm sure you can relate to this just in terms of some of the overwork sometimes in care and helper positions, when you're really in like a community-based setting.
Well, yeah, I kind of chuckled inside when you said, I can't remember exactly what you said, but like retired therapist. I'm like, can you
great. Like, once a therapist.
Well, that's a little bit of a long story because I decided not to continue pursuing licensure, which I know you've talked about on this podcast before a lot, and there's pros and cons to that. I think right now I'm finding I don't quite know what space I'm fitting into, if that, because I can't really call myself a therapist anymore, not being licensed. Am I a coach? That word doesn't quite fit. But then as you do some of this work, you're like, well, it all kind of defies categorization. And I like the freedom that this brings because I wanted to and think it's so valuable for women, especially in the postpartum time, to be able to offer visits in person and go into someone's home. And ethically, for a whole set of reasons, therapists can't really do that. And we have these kind of strange, I don't know, sometimes it can be a really helpful, safe frame for the therapeutic relationship, but often almost this false sense of neutrality and a way in which you kind of have to erase yourself. And I think as I became more opinionated too in motherhood and in the process of going through birth and postpartum, and loss and all of that, I wanted to show up as fully myself too. And I don't know. So
I think we pretend that we can like separate ourselves from our work, but especially this kind of work that you and I do, it's like we are our work, it's hard to separate yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you are the vessel for all these relationships and for supporting women and really like connecting to their own intuition and process. But to do that really authentically, sometimes you kind of want to be outside of the system because that system is so broken and often really hurts women and families. So there's a lot of reasons like why I didn't finish the licensure process, even though I had most of my hours between these two states, between California and Washington. But we ended up back down here, which is a long story. But yeah, to get back to kind of the origin of all of this, I realized recently that because I had so loved working with teenagers and with this time of adolescence that has so much turmoil in it and identity formation, that one of the reasons that later on I was so drawn to working with moms in this time is matrescence has so many parallels to adolescence, right? Like the hormonal shifts, the kind of loss of the self that you knew before, the change of every relationship and more conflict within each relationship.
They're like rebirths of self. Yeah.
Yeah, so many deaths of self and rebirths of self. And even though in adolescence you're a little bit more obsessed with the idea of who you want to be and who you are, and I think, and this is one thing I really wanted to talk about today too, is I think something so unique in the matrescence context that ties in with this more like mystical component of it all is that you're not even trying to almost reconstitute a self in a way. I think if we're tapping into this process at its core, it's actually to go beyond, like to reach a new level of something else that's not even trying to put it back together, but kind of in your own undoing to not just transcend in like a bypassing way of the whole process, but include like every difficult element of what you're experiencing in a really authentic way that brings you closer to source and God, whatever you want to call that relationship, your spirituality. It is a window into all of that and almost an untapped, I think for many women, source of power and insight and a spirituality that could really like lead the world in a new direction that I don't think we fully own oftentimes. And I'm obviously not the first person to make this observation, but it's definitely like a mystical initiation to motherhood.
Yeah. So what was your initiation into motherhood?
Good question. Yes. Okay. So when I was at that really stressful job, working with too many people at once, I had a miscarriage. And I had always known that I wanted to be a mom and be, I was at that point married. I kind of just assumed, we would have a family. We both wanted that. And so we've been trying, and it was in my first trimester. And I think and it was very physically painful as well. It was a really kind of gruesome event. It was so visceral, and, to birth something that is dead is a strange process. And I also, as so many women do, especially if it's your first pregnancy, had gone so quickly into the envisioning of our whole future life with this baby and all that would entail. So I was really, even though I knew how common it was to have a miscarriage and how, my husband's mom had I think at least 6 plus 2 stillbirths. And I'd had clients who'd gone through so many situations of loss and grief, not just in the, mothering space, but yes, I was really devastated by this. So it took me a long time to get back into wanting to try for another baby. But I was also really grateful for going through that because I think it, like with what I was saying about motherhood, there was something really mystical about it too. Like we all go through these situations of pain, but how we kind of psychologically and emotionally process it can either lead us to a lot of suffering, which usually it does for me. I'm not saying I'm good at this, but um, wrestling with those questions and with the whole process of pregnancy and birth, you're right on this edge all the time between death and life. So I think I got really interested in grief at this time as not just a concept, but sort of how we embody that and how it does bring us closer to the divine in a way and gives us all these amazing insights, as horrible often as it is going through something like that. So, yes, so of course, I still really wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be in this club because I felt like there was something so powerful there that I couldn't quite grasp, didn't quite get, but I wanted to be in it so badly. And yes, so I took a pause from work, and that's when we had moved back down to the Bay Area and eventually did. Now my daughter's almost 2, but had a lot of anxiety during that pregnancy too. I think once loss is front of mind and seems like a constant possibility, you always just, yeah, you have that in your mind.
It's more of a reality for you. Yeah.
Totally. And yeah, it also taught me a lot about, how to be present with people going through something similar or so much worse than what I did, because there were so many well-intended but really comments and lack of support, where I often ended up feeling really silenced and really isolated and really alone. So that's kind of another piece of why I say I'm thankful for it, because of course that gives us more empathy then in working with women who go through these things. You kind of, yeah, you've lived it too. I think that's valuable. So yes, okay, so pregnancy. I will say I was so shaped then by connecting to my midwife in pregnancy because she really, which I think any good birth keeper or like a really skilled healer or supporter of this process for women will always empower your own intuition and trust in yourself and the research that you do and yeah, how you're feeling about it and your own your trust in who you are becoming as a mother. So I felt like at each stage, and especially in postpartum, it was always about my choice, even though birth, that's a whole other thing, did not go. It was not in the birth center as hoped. And I ended up doing an induction in the hospital, and I thought it was absolutely horrible. My husband would probably disagree. He was glad baby was safe. Or, supposedly. But yes, it was very counter to what I wanted for the birth. But despite all of that, my midwife still really like ushered me into my birth as a mother too. She really helped me feel so held and seen. And I was so moved by that because again, there were so many like misattuned moments, even though you have all these well-meaning supportive people in your life, including your partner, you often really feel deeply misunderstood, angry, ambivalent, grieving losses of so many things, whether that's like, your birth didn't go as you had hoped, or you've just completely lost your whole life as you knew it before. And your ability to work in the same way, even how you think, everything is just completely blown up and needs to be like reconstituted. So anyways, yeah, I think we can get more into maybe like the postpartum process, but I guess all of this had again catapulted me into feeling so passionate about supporting women through not only the like preconception and conception time of a baby, but really conceptualizing yourself as a mother and the massive identity shifts, sort of the, yeah, like maybe not even seeing it as identity reformation process, but how do we move beyond that? Birth experiences and traumas, relationship and communication work, mother wounds, which is another interesting thing that came up for me when I knew I was having a girl. Just lots of complicated feelings came up for me about what that would mean between in a mother-daughter relationship. And I know it does for so many women. Relationships with dads too, with parenting, but particularly, of course, what it means to mom, and body image. And again, like that theme of grief was coming up for so many moms that I knew, so many new mothers, even if they were holding their baby in their arms. It was really inescapable. And there was so much shame and hiding and isolation that accompanied that. So I think I just wanted to break that open and get in there with people and be deeply present and hearing them. And so that's, I guess, where this whole name of motherhood had come up too. Like, how do we combine this idea of motherhood and matrescence with really being seen and heard in our stories and finding out what are our narratives about this for ourselves and how do we shift those over time in a way that we can really like integrate and own.
We always talk about like, we're like, home birth is great, you know, the prenatals and bonding with the midwife is great. Postpartum's where it's at, you know, and I feel like most women are constantly trying to improve on their postpartum experience. You know, it's like the longest chunk of time that you're in, and usually the time frame where you need the most support and where it's very lacking in our society, and with all the like hormone regulations, and it's just it can be a lot. Yeah. How was that for you, your like postpartum period, and like knowing what you know?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about this today, that, you know, in childhood, when you watch all these cartoons and movies, that it's always this lead up to the marriage. You never see all these like messy, the hashing out and the sustaining of an intimate relationship afterward, right? And I think the lead up even to, again, these are such well-intentioned rituals around doing baby showers and keeping things really positive for women, especially first-time moms, not wanting to scare them about birth and postpartum. But then it does kind of set us up for some shock and failure when we're like, who warned us about how hard this is? And
Yeah,
would we have
like, where's the postpartum plan? We have the birth plan. Like, where's the postpartum plan? Like, how to dial that in?
Yes, and I think that's becoming so much more of the conversation, which is wonderful and a lot more of the focus. But still, we see there's so many pregnancy books and very few about how to keep your marriage together after you've had a baby. How to navigate all of these massive shifts, how to keep yourself nourished, how to actually ask for the support that you need. But I think there's also a really cool movement toward, yes, like in owning that so deeply and reclaiming that time. I think asking for a lot more from partners in our community, and also having the humility to know when you need more support and to reach out for that, whether that's, you know, therapy or hiring someone to help, or asking someone in your community to come over, just saying like, I need food, please just make me meals, you know, whatever that is. But it is hard to, I think we're not
like how the meal train, everyone brings everything the first 2 weeks and then they just think you're good
and then
to go.
you sort of like, everyone drops off the face of the earth, and then stuff really gets hard with sleep. And
So I see your doggy.
So okay, yeah. So sorry, to go back to your original question about, should we go back to that? The time. I think I was so shocked and disappointed about the birth. I could not really get over it. And I felt like, you know, after a certain point, no one really wants to keep hearing about all the reasons why you're so disappointed in yourself or providers or what happened and why it feels so painful to you. And you can kind of just sit there and cry. And so much about the experience is really beyond words, everything that's happening to you. And you don't have time to catch up from what just happened. You're so thrown into the thick of it. So I think I was just feeling, I'm a very like probably overly emotional person. So I was really like tapped into what was going on, but felt really deeply dysregulated. I had a lot of support from my husband, and he was making me great food. You know, there were a lot of things that were really great in place. And I think what was super helpful and the most helpful was probably the frequency with which my midwife would come over, you know, to check on me, or we had people come into our house for chiropractic or cranial sacral, or, you know, whatever, anything that felt healing for my body or baby's body, you know, was deeply supportive. But I think I mean, who isn't so rocked by the whole thing? I think I was surprised at how bad my body felt and how difficult and technical breastfeeding was. My nipples weren't everting. I had to use the shield, and at the hospital, they gave me the wrong size. And I totally panicked that baby wasn't getting enough food and bought form. And I went on to breastfeed for over a year, about a year, and it all worked out. And I think, the resilience of women in keeping going with some of these processes when you're in so much physical pain, but you just keep at it until you figure it out and it works. When you're often just alone trying to do it is really remarkable to me. But yeah, I was pretty wiped out by it, I would say. But at the same, it's all the things, right? Like it's all of that ambivalence where you're like, I need every moment with my baby. I love this closeness. I wouldn't trade the bed sharing every night, the breastfeeding, the, only contact naps, all of this.
But the thing is, for some people, the solution is to remove all that from you, to have you be separate from the experience when what you really need is more support.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to be in it, but with other people too, who are in it with you.
Yeah. And I really believe like separation is never the answer. Like we're so separated from nature. We're so separated from our intuitions often. And we're really encouraged in a lot of pop culture and social media even to separate more from our babies. And of course, I know from my background and seeing the effects on kids, right, in attachment, how deeply wounding forever those things are, and how important our physical closeness is to our babies. And sorry, my dog is breathing so heavily. Little down. So
it's a hot day.
I think, I think that's why I became so interested in talking with women about these paradoxical kind of coexisting feeling states too, of like a desperation for freedom, that like no desire for separateness, the resentment, and almost sometimes like momentary hatred of your baby with this like completely overwhelming love, sense of like pure self-sacrifice and ecstasy and devotion, but you're also depleted. And so all of those things, like the fact that they could exist in this container simultaneously within yourself, so like perfectly imperfectly.
And how much fear women have to say exactly what you said. Like just that one piece about like momentary hatred towards your baby. Like I remember that with my daughter after not being able to nurse my son and nursing her, just wanting to leave her on the balcony and shut the door, and then feeling horrible that I just thought that, because I love her so much and I want to breastfeed her, but it was so hard.
Or even when you do it, I think like we should all be more honest about like, yeah, I wanted to take a poop by myself and I closed the door in my daughter's face, and then I immediately started crying because I felt so guilty. Like,
yeah,
if we could just be more real about these moments, we all have moments that we just totally snap, and then we're so overcome by our own shame and guilt that we become more disconnected from other moms because we don't share these real stories,
And we have these nuclear families where we're so separate from our community that we're supposed to be a part of, they're supposed to just be right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I joke with moms, there needs to be some community warehouse that's open 24/7, and moms can just like show up middle of the night, whatever, just like be together,
In solidarity doing it.
Yeah, just like sit on a couch and nurse together, and snack and
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's what is so probably like the best part about being a mom, right? That you actually understand how you can hold these conflicting states. Like it's almost what everyone tries to achieve in meditation and in all these like mystic practices and in like a non-dualistic framing of the world, to be like, it's not either or, it's both and all the time. Like everything is interconnected and everything belongs and has a place in this. And there's no feeling that we actually really need to disavow. There's like bad behavior and things that we shouldn't act on, but we all have these intrusive thoughts. You know, if we could just actually name, like bring some of this stuff out of the shadows, it would lose its power over us. And I see that time and time again in working with clients, right? Like to just say something is such a relief. And to have someone witness that and say, it doesn't change that I see you as so good in
Mm.
every way and
Yeah.
that you're an amazing, beautiful mother.
I was sitting with
None of
the
that is
mom
going
once who
to
I could tell she was holding it all together and trying to pretend that everything was fine with her two little ones and brand new baby. And so I just started sharing about all my like bad mom moments. And she just started crying. It was like, this morning was really hard. And I yelled at them. And I was like, and you're still a good mom, you know? And
Yeah,
hard. Yeah.
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 It's so beautiful. Like I think to the point of that story too is like when you also are vulnerable with someone
Yeah.
about like your own real life. Like that's another thing with being a therapist. Sometimes there's such a stigma against self-disclosure
Yeah.
that you always really want to say like, I've gone through this too. I'm so imperfect. You know, XYZ really areas of my life are a total mess right now. I don't have this figured out,
Mhm.
but I'm here to like witness this with you and hear your heart and yeah, just be in it together. And it does, like you're saying, open people up to just truly feel and name and say what they're going through and feel such like self-compassion and just that like healing moment with in relationship with another person.
Yeah, because I think the harm comes from not feeling like you can say something, not having anybody you can speak to, and trying to hold it all together and not asking for help. And then it all spirals and spirals and turns into not just intrusive thoughts, or a broken mother, you know, who just is like, yeah, can't recover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and completely dissociated often
Mhm.
from the world around you just to kind of survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was picturing like that our work is probably very similar in that sense, you know, sitting in women's homes and having these conversations. It's just, yeah, so important. I mean, I didn't realize becoming a midwife how much I would also become a therapist.
Totally. Yeah.
That was not part of our training.
I said to my husband, I just need to be pregnant again so I can see Taya, our midwife, because, you know, she felt like that to me. Like
Uh-huh.
I missed that relationship
Uh-huh.
when our meetings were done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was often about just sitting so that I could cry with her. You know, nothing particularly about perinatal things. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, you totally are therapists. I respect it so much. But yeah, it's hard because you haven't always had the frame too for how do I deal with this with a woman? Like, how do we talk about this? So I think, yeah, that's another reason I felt like, I mean, there's so many amazing therapists who do a lot of perinatal work and who work in grief and loss and pregnancy and postpartum. But I know it's often so hard to find that right therapist, or it's so expensive. It's really hard to access care. So that was another thing I really wanted to do with Motherhood and felt passionate about is just making this really affordable, really accessible. Yeah. And where you could also see like, oh, I like this woman, you know, like this is what we're offering. Like this is something that feels aligned and attuned with like my values or where I want to head in motherhood, and working on like my spiritual life in parallel or really like because of being a mom and what that looks like. So I don't think that often, and not, I shouldn't say that. Like, it's not like you don't do that in therapy, but I definitely started noticing some patterns and like gaps in the care, um, and things that weren't being addressed in women's kind of trauma around the whole thing. So,
I think it brings like a level of trust from whoever it is you're sitting in front of too, when you can be honest and real with them and you can, you know, like I'm always like, we don't want to be too professional. We want to be professional enough that people trust us, but like you want to be human too, you know, and honest and raw. And like you were saying about there's like a therapist for everyone. We feel the same way about midwives. We're not perfect for everyone. Hopefully there's somebody perfect for every woman.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think really women know that fit. And
Mhm.
it's such a gift when you find like providers and those people where you feel so that you can really trust them and you feel really seen by them. I really hope that for
Yeah, you
everyone.
feel better after your visit. You can't wait to see them again. You know, whenever we're interviewing, like that's what you're looking for, that you can't wait to see them again. You feel better after seeing them, never worse.
Yeah. And also empowered to make your own decision. Like you don't feel undermined in your own decision making either.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's a big one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Can you speak more to motherhood? Like if women are interested in this, like what does that look like? You talked about virtual and home visits.
Yeah. Yeah. So because now we're in Sonoma County, I mean, I'm willing to go to Marin too, but I think kind of within this vicinity, I've been offering more of the home visits and that's been really nice just to sit with women, especially in that immediate postpartum time. It also gives me sometimes context in the home or seeing interactions with a partner and seeing you with your baby. Yeah, I mean, it's all your real life. It's important to like see that. Yeah, so with motherhood, but a lot of it is virtual. I think so many people like the flexibility of doing these video calls, and so that's great. And I'm going to start some postpartum groups pretty soon here too. Also, I've been wanting forever to do a grief and loss group. Um, but yeah, so as this is kind of in its early stages, I would say it's been a lot of like on the grief loss theme and postpartum readjustment so far. But we can talk about this at the end too, but all that info too is on my website for people who want to get in touch or to send anyone they know my way if they think they might benefit or just want to talk.
Yeah, because I think grief and loss, it's important to have these groups for the families and sometimes for the extended family too. Like you were saying, how many people would say things that weren't the best thing to say? Well, most people want to show up in the right way and they just don't know how. Like when somebody is experiencing loss, how do you show up for them? What do you say? Will you speak a little bit to that for anyone listening who is like supporting someone else, whether it be
Totally. That's a great question. Great question. Yeah. And I love talking about this with people because I think, first of all, we have to get so much more comfortable talking about death. Death is a part of life. If we weren't so afraid to share sometimes, well, I'm in early pregnancy, if we could share the whole process with people more without the fear of making others uncomfortable in case we lose the baby. Anything can happen at any point, right? Like so many women have stillbirths also. Like the weight of that when you've gotten to the end of your pregnancy and feeling, well, yeah, I mean, at any point we can lose anyone that we love. And so I think it creates this like vice grip of so much fear around that when we don't name it and we don't talk about how this razor edge in birth between life and death that women are kind of sitting on, and the real fear for so many women in childbirth of their own demise, of the baby's death. So yeah, so first of all, just really getting comfortable in talking about it and not being afraid to go there. It doesn't have to be this like macabre, dark, taboo subject. I think also really allowing anyone in grief or loss, whether that's around a death or a loss, or just that, not just, but equally so, the loss of identity, the grieving of a past self, any of the forms in which we grieve many things all the time.
a loss of an experience, like how you thought you would birth or
Yes, exactly. Or missing your pregnancy, missing being pregnant, even though you have the baby. A lot of people don't understand that. That one's a little bit passing, but yeah, the loss in your relationship. Often partners are really grieving too, because they can feel really abandoned or alone too, or turned against. So I'm losing my train of thought, but yeah, so whatever form that's taking, not rushing the grieving person in any way around. I think there was this idea maybe that got a little there was that book about the stages of grief, right? Where I think people got such an idea of it being a really linear process. Okay, you move through anger to XYZ. But there's so much more now literature around like the circular kind of nature of grief, and that it for many people never goes away. So there's the idea of, yes, time heals certain things, but we really can't rush the person's process. And we also can't limit the number of times that they need to tell and repeat a story. right? There's something really healing in that. And in psychotherapy, there's this kind of idea of something spiral, and now I won't be able to think of it, but
Mhm.
that as you kind of spiral, like as you repeat the story, or in a really, and this is in a safe, a safe therapeutic context, right? Where as you get to kind of hit other aspects of your story and name things and own things and narrativize it, in that spiral, you get closer and closer to kind of this like nugget of truth for yourself and to your, I don't even want to use the word healing, but maybe integration of the whole thing is a better word. And so, yeah, so letting people tell their story as many times and in as many ways as they need and want to, not being afraid to ask people about it. Um, or if someone they lost their son in the third trimester, name him. He has a name. He was loved by this family. You can talk about that. You can talk about the loss of like the dreams for what his life was going to be and what the family life was going to look like and how they envisioned it. So
Yeah, I almost lost both of my children. And yeah, it took years of like sharing and processing and thinking to like come up with my own healing and what my truth was about the story. And yeah, it takes a long time. Yeah. And now my story is very like solidified, like it feels like it's truth and I know what I took from the experience and how it's made me better. And not that you have to get to that. You don't have to feel like it's made you better. I'm
no.
lucky that I feel that way. Yeah.
Were there any things that people kind of supported you with, or even said or did, that felt particularly attuned in that process of where you were coming to and like what you needed to?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I realized that helped, so it wasn't anything somebody said, but how much everyone showed up for me. I remember saying that it's the most scared and terrified I've ever felt, and also the most loved I've ever felt at the same time. And I feel like that really contributed to the experience and the story behind it, that I hope if anyone's ever going through a hardship that they also realize that they've also never felt more loved in their entire life. That I feel like having the balance of the two helps for the healing. Whereas if all you have is this grief and that's all that's there, then that's all you're left with. You don't see the like birth death like duality of it if all you have is one.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
need that whole continuum.
Yeah. And so just like I usually just tell people just show up in any way you can. If you're not sure what's the right way, like I remember telling my girlfriend I needed her to bring me cabbage. It was for my swollen feet, but I didn't have the time or the words or whatever to explain. I was just like, she's like,
Yeah.
"What can I bring?" I said, "Cabbage." So she was like in the store, like, she can't possibly want me to bring her cabbage. And so she brought me cabbage and sauerkraut. Like she was like, "I don't want to mess this up." Like, so she's like, "Why did you possibly need a
In
head of
what
cabbage for?"
form did you want
Yeah.
the cabbage?
And it's like one of my favorite stories now, like, oh, she was just
I
like,
love
I have to
that.
show up and I don't want to get it wrong.
So sweet.
Yeah. So
People
I was like,
bring
great, I need sauerkraut too, probiotics, all that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll take it all. We'll take it all. People showing up with food is like such a beautiful love language. A neighbor who I hardly knew at the time, who knew that I just had this miscarriage, had brought me a beautifully homemade loaf of sourdough bread, and just said, "You don't even need to talk to me," which I barely could. I didn't even want to answer the door or have anyone see me, but just to drop off like bread and soup.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember somebody brought me after my C-section with my second granny panties. I was just like they would come up all the way to under my boobs. Like, I was like, would never have thought to ask for these, and these are awesome.
But I feel held.
Yes, literally, and all the way. Yeah, just all the little things. And I learned with my second where I was like, just say yes to help. Like anytime I thought of something I could need, I just made a list. And if someone's like, can I get you anything? I was like, here's my list, like just not being afraid to say exactly what it is you need because people do want to show up in the right way and they don't know how. So maybe they come over postpartum and they hold the baby when you're like, I want to hold my baby. I need all these other things done, like dishes and laundry. And so just like being able to be honest about what help actually looks like. Teach everybody. We teach them what showing up looks like.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we sometimes subconsciously try to coach them because I
Yeah.
think for women too, there's a lot of we're so socialized to be really agreeable. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of women, especially, I think you tap more into when you've been a mom for a while into that ability to just say like cut the BS and say exactly what I need. But earlier on, you're still like really tied into, oh, but I need to do this for this friend, or like this isn't our dynamic.
People pleasing and
Yes, totally. And that just really has to go because you just can't function as a mom that way. Like I remember listening to my my sister-in-law, sorry, talk about that when she had her son. She would just be like, I need to say exactly what I need to say, when I need to leave this event, what food I need for my kid. She was so assertive and I was almost shocked by it at the time, pre being a mom, but now I get it.
yeah, yeah.
Like, let me say what I need. Yeah.
Before we end, will you tell the listeners all the ways that they can get in touch with you and what your offerings are?
Totally. Yeah. So my website's probably the best just landing place for all my phone number and
Okay.
email are on there. And so that's motherheard.com, HEARD. And then I kind of recently got on Instagram too. I was kind of resisting trying to do it, but it's a good place to connect with people too. But so on Instagram, it's our motherhood, like or our OUR motherhood. And yeah, and my emails are motherhood@gmail.com too. And then yeah, on there it's really easy just to get like you can just get in touch with me and then we can figure out if you want to do a video call or in person or whatever it is. But there's different kind of packages or formats on there if you want to meet with your baby or your partner or whatever, we can figure that. Most of the time people just do one-on-one. And yeah, I think it's a great time also, like don't be afraid to reach out, I would say, to any listeners or anyone thinking about it. If like postpartum is this amazing, really like neuroplastic time for your brain. So it's a really like, even though I know often you feel so overwhelmed and that you can't add one other thing or you don't want to get into it because you're just trying to keep it all together, it's actually a really great time for like building new emotional regulation skills and emotional intelligence. And your brain is like at this, yeah, like this neuroplastic time that it's never going to be quite again until you're a mom again. But I think that lasts for like at least a couple of years. So it's a wonderful time to do some of the work and like dig in there in the places that you maybe have been afraid to, but can really make some lasting change. So I would really encourage people to do that. I would love to just hear like what's resonated with you from today too, and what we talked about. Just feel free to get in touch for any reason. Yeah, or book a session there. If you just have other questions for me, I'd love to talk.
Thank you. Is there any last thing that you feel like we didn't touch on or last thing you want to leave the listeners with?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there was probably a lot. I think I'm with ideas.
Part two.
Gavin, like I probably didn't say half the things I wanted to, but I saw you writing so many things. Was there anything that you wanted to go back to that I didn't finish covering?
I mean, I took a lot of notes. I loved the connection between like the teenager and parenthood and everything. It's just like, it feels almost like the baby, like you're born. That's kind of like rebirth, redeath, life transformation, and then the teenage years and then parenthood. It's like such a special time where there's this huge transformation. And yeah, I just love the connection between the three of those. But yeah, I don't think there was any other question I had.
It's such a metamorphosis. Yeah, such a transitional. Oh, I think that's one like image I almost wanted to like leave with people too is this idea with liminal kind of spaces and in transition spaces. Grief is one of those too, but particularly matrescence is really like this threshold space where you're not quite in one place or another, right? But within that, there's something so rich and untapped for many people. We often try to gloss over it and we don't like transition and we don't like change and we're really uncomfortable with it because it does feel icky. Our bodies feel icky and weird and in transition. But yeah, it's actually like a deeply rich kind of spiritual ground for our work in that total undoing and in this in between threshold space. So I guess I really wanted, I probably had said that earlier, but I just really want to leave women with this idea of like tap into that power right now for yourself. If you feel like you're in major transition, that's a great place to be. It's your ability to hold all of this, and the paradox is your superpower. So don't try to skip it. Like this is where it's at.
Yeah. Well, and going back to that thing I was speaking on, like feeling the most loved and held and cared for within these transitions, like as a baby, does this baby feel loved and cared for? As a teenager, like, do you feel loved and cared for and heard? Like, as a parent going into parenthood, like, do you feel loved and cared for and heard? Labor, like, transition, like that's all I was thinking. Like that is the hardest part and the part where you feel icky and all these things. And if we can go through each of these feeling loved and cared for, then we come out of it on the other side with like so much growth and like feeling proud and feeling confident and like I didn't think I could be better, and now here I am, better and stronger and
with like such an expanded capacity to love and have that outpouring of yeah.
Because like you can have the opposite too, like in all these transitions and just feeling like you have no idea who you are anymore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Which is okay. I mean, we don't really. Who even are we? I think it's okay to feel that, like total upending. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored to have this conversation. So thank you for holding the space for it today.
You're very welcome.
What a gift.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe. If you'd like to follow along, you can find us on Instagram at Born Wild Podcast and Facebook. You can go to our website at www.bornwildmidwifery.com. See you later.